Hello guys, have you encountered this problem where you have this sort of range of data, um, but you plan to put it this way? So we have a sample of what we are looking at, and then this is the dirty data, and we want to transform them to this data. So in my latest episode, I was talking about data cleaning and transformation. So imagine you as a data analyst or as whatever role that you are into, but your job is to transform this dirty data. It's not quite dirty, it's just perhaps the way it is structured to this way. So how are you going to go about that? So there are two ways to first of all take this into a Power Query, which I will show you. One is just to use a range of cell, and one is to import it as to import it from another workbook. So because we're already on this sheet, we can decide to just use range of cells straight into Power Query. Power Query is an integrated data transformation tool that is being attached, I think, as from Excel 2013, if I'm not mistaken. That's where you can begin to see integration of Power Query using, if you see something like this, get data from your version, just know that that's a connector to a Power Query. It's not even about what Power Query. You can even import data from different sources to your Excel. If there is a web, there is you can even import data from CSV file and different other data sources like Azure, different database. As you can see, we also have from Power Platform, from other online services like SharePoint and all that. So that's by the way. So let's take this straight into Power Query and then transform it so that they can look exactly like this. Now, this is how we go about that. First of all, come here to mark the selected region of the cell, which is like the range of cell, using Control A. And once I've selected that region, you see that everything, the whole data is being selected. And then I click on, you can see when you come to the data tab, you go straight to this place from table or range. So because this is a range of set that we've selected, so we can easily just take it straight to Power Query. So when we click there, it takes it automatically to the Power Query. It might ask you if it has header or not. So for the nature of this transformation, we'll say it doesn't have any header because we'll come to a point where we still promote them in our steps on Power Query. So exactly, so we'll say it does not have any header. So we are not going to check this. So once we click OK, it takes us straight into Power Query. This is exactly the way it was from our Excel to this place. I may not necessarily need this, so I'm just gonna delete this step, change. I want it exactly the way it is, which is from the source. Now we'll be looking at this. This will be like our apply step for those that are new to Power Query. The steps that we'll take will always be taken here. And for us to go back in our step, you can easily delete your last step. That's how you go back or you undo when you are dealing with Power Query or when you're dealing with data transformation in Power Query. Now, what is the first thing that I need to do? The first thing that I need to do is to first of all understand the nature of my data. Now, I haven't seen what we had from the sample data of how it's supposed to be. So we have one anchor column. So this is basically like one anchor column, and we are supposed to transpose these to serve as from rows to column. So these, in particular, these segment and shipment that are in form of rows, we have to transpose them to be as what? As column. But to transpose them, right, we also need to understand one more thing, which is to understand the relationship between the column values and the row values that we are looking to transpose. So what's the first thing that we'll take here is to what? To go to our transform data and then to transpose this. Now that we've transposed it, now this is like the columns that we want to keep while we unpivot other ones. So this is a case of what? Transposing and what? Unpivoting. Now it can be a bit technical in terms of when to when to transpose and how to transpose, but I think it's something that comes with intuition based on the type of data that you have. The main thing is for you to understand each of the steps and how to apply them. That is the basic thing, because data transformation is more like each data is unique. Each data transformation is unique to others. So it just like in medicine, each patient is different from the other. So how you approach this data might be different from how you approach the next one, which I will show us in the next example of this type of data transformation. So after transposing, now before we unpivoting works with the headers. So, but we don't have headers yet. So all I need is to promote my header so that you see the other ID and the values of the other ID will be on the header, so that when we unpivot, the headers will then serve as what? The values. That's like how the unpivoting works. So we'll do what? We promote our header. So promoting header is just simply mean making the first row your header. That's what it simply means. So we're gonna make here just click here. So this is to promote and this is to demote. Demote is to use your header as first row. Promote is to use your first row as headers. Just in case I use any of those rows, you understand what I mean. So I want to what? Promote my headers. Now that I've promoted the header, basically there is nothing here. So I know that it's not gonna give me anything if I pivot them. So I'm just gonna delete this particular column because there is nothing there. Now I need you to see something. For each of the other ID, there is a cell. There is a cell value for each of the other ID. There is a cell value for each of the other ID. There is a cell value. But the difference is there are now more columns than rows. In this kind of case, there are now more what? See, we have 825 columns as against 12 rows. Meanwhile, it is supposed to be the other way around. However, we could just unpivot all of them. But because there are two, that's where the your your type of transformation comes in. Because from what we have in the sample, we saw that the segment and the shift mode are already serving as columns. So we are going to keep them as column while we unpivot other ones. We are going to keep these as columns while we unpivot other ones. How do we do that? All we need is just to select these two. You can select this one, hold Control and select the next one. Or you can hold Shift if they are consecutive. Since they are consecutive to each other, I can just hold Shift and still select, which Shift is when you're selecting range of what? Column, beginning to the end. But Control is when you're selecting differently, selectively. So either way it will work. Now that we've selected the two columns, all we need is just to come here and say unpivot others. Because we have selected these two, that's why we are saying unpivot other ones. Reason being that we don't want to unpivot these ones as we already want them as column. It's the ones that we don't want as columns that will what unpivot so that they can turn from being column to being row. That's the idea of unpivoting. So we say unpivot other column. Now, I think in terms of I think the main thing is done already in terms of what we needed to achieve. The main thing is done. Every other thing is just to do our cleanup. Just like someone that is cooking. After cooking, you do your cleanup. So you can see now each of the other ID now has the sales value according to their to their ship mode. And if you go down, just to be curious, you can begin to see, oh, there is something irregular here. And what is that? we have under the attribute, because this whole attribute is supposed to be the order ID, why the value here will be the sales from our sample that they gave us. So I can see that we have a grand total in the order ID, and then we'll have a huge number compared to the rest. So what that means is perhaps from the range of cell that was selected, because that was Excel, right? So we don't actually need aggregate values in this kind. We can easily aggregate them in our other analysis, but when you are transforming them like this, you don't necessarily need these in at this level. We can easily populate the grand total in our analysis review and analysis in our chart area or wherever that we are bringing that report. So what that means is I'm going to remove this grand total from the attribute, and so that every other thing here will the rows, every other thing here will also be removed. So we can see that it is more like a pattern. The grand total always comes after the next segment of the ship mode. So after the first class, so we have the grand total for first class, and we can see that we have grand total for same day. And I think if we continue to go down, we'll see such, yeah. So we have grand total for what? For second class. So that tells you that is some sort of uh we have to remove the grand total from this. But before we remove the grand total, I like to do my cleaning in sequence. I like to do everything at once. So let's rename properly our column names. We'll just remove this that is on the segment just to rename it very well, just to remove the unwanted character there. To edit your column is to double click. I'm just double clicking on the column. Now, because I want to rename this, I'm gonna call it order ID, which is what it is. And we have to call this sales, which is the sales value. Now that I've done that, I will just come here and type grand total. So I'm gonna uncheck grand total. So wherever all the grand total on that column will be what? Removed from the data. So we don't have any complication in our analysis. That's also one of the things of data cleaning. You have to have the eye. You have to have the eye to what? To spot the difference. So checking back again, you see, there are no longer grand total again. Every row under this column are all what? Order ID, which makes more sense to see. After that, what next? I think the job is done, basically. You may just want to just cross-check to make sure that there are no funny entries in your columns, and the job is done. You can now rename, you can rename your table, because once you load it into Excel, it will take the name of the table that you have renamed it with. So maybe we can call this cleaned, sorry, cleaned underscore 31. Yeah, so we have cleaned it. So clean underscore 31. So we'll go back to the home tab and close and load. So when you close and load, it automatically loads it into a new sheet. It will automatically create a new sheet into the Power BI, sorry, into the Excel, exactly the way it is. If you look at our clean, dirty, and our sample, the way they told us is supposed to be, you can see that we've gotten exactly the way it is here, the sample of what they want from us. Segment, ship mode, order ID, and sales. You come here, segment, ship mode, order ID, and sales. All transformed from this. So we have moved this to this. That is one way we can go around. So the second way, this one will be when you are working with two anchor columns. Here we can see that we only have one anchor column, which is what? The order ID. So what happens? How do we handle it when we have more than what? More than one anchor column? How do you handle it? That will be our next one. Stay tuned.